Pittsburgh Steelers fans, welcome in to this Sunday night edition of the Steelers Q&A. My name is Jeremy Betts. So excited to be joined by many of you who will be watching this live on YouTube, Facebook, X, wherever you like to get your live stuff. This is going to be there for you. And then you can also check this podcast out, as well as all of the other content from the Steel Curtain Network, wherever you get your podcasts on audio only. And hey, we've got plenty of action going on tonight. Lots to talk about. Already seeing some regulars in the chat. Thank you so much for tuning in. Got one of my favorite guests, one of everybody's favorites here from the Steel Curtain Network, and it is none other than Shannon White. Shannon, welcome in to the Q&A. Figured I'd bring you in pre-draft here since we're down to it, man. It's 4 days away, and I'd love to get your final thoughts. I know that you are a busy man on the podcast side of things as we wrap up and get closer to the draft, but how's it going?
Oh, it's going great. I'm super excited. As you said, we're closing in. It's so close now we can taste it. So
yeah,
I'm excited to talk with you and our community and hear everybody's opinions and our hopes and dreams for this Thursday.
Absolutely. Hey, everybody, right now, stop what you're doing and give us a like and a follow if you haven't done so already. And then pop in your question. We want to answer as many draft questions as we can tonight. So if you've got anything, first round to seventh round, I don't care what you got, trade options, whatever it is, Shannon and I, we've got you tonight. We're going to answer as many questions as we can. We're excited to do it. But hey, let's do this, Shannon, while we're waiting for some of these questions to flow in here. Mm-hmm. What's your thoughts right now as we're 4 days away? Are you feeling confident that the Steelers can put together a good class, or are you excited about this year's crop of players? We haven't talked in a while. Give me your thoughts.
I'm way more excited now with Omar Khan and Andy Weidl, the new scouting department. I'm way more excited than I was under the Kevin Colbert regime. And we've talked about it, me, you, Andrew, Matty P, when he was here, all of us, about wanting a more modern approach. And I think they have that now. Like if they have to trade up like they did last year to get a guy, let's say Talisi Fuaga, who's my favorite. If they trade up a little bit, they could get him. I believe that they could trade back into whatever round to get another guy they want. Because I have faith that Khan and Weidl have connections. People will pick up the phone or people will call them and say, hey, we'd like to move up and, swap. That's exciting. I think we all enjoy that. So I'm very pleased with this group of draft prospects. I think it's very deep at positions of need for the Steelers. Offensive line is very deep. Wide receiver is very deep. It might be the strongest class of wide receivers that I can remember because it goes literally 4 or 5 rounds deep that you could still get a quality guy. So, and then, of course, there's some positions that are a little more shallow. So you have to think of that about where they'll end up being picked, because if you wait too long, you might not get a guy you need. So, but I'm very excited about it.
Me too, man. And I look at what the Steelers have done as far as the work on this class and who they've brought in. And I just had a thought that I've been thinking about this for a while now, but it seems to be that with all the needs on offense, we're overlooking the fact that the Steelers have spent a decent amount of time with defensive tackle prospects, with linebackers. They had 3 linebackers in for a visit and met with a bunch of them at the combine. They're not done on defense either. And this is a team that they're spending a lot of money on defense. So you got to fill in some of those position groups with higher end draft picks that are good talents on the cheap for as long as you can while you're paying these big name guys like TJ and Alex Highsmith and Minkah Fitzpatrick and Cam Hayward as well. And so there's a lot going on outside of just center, tackle, wide receiver. Those are the ones getting a lot of the buzz, but just as important and fascinating to me about the process in the lead up here has been that the Steelers are very zoned in on some of these defensive guys in the front seven. We know that they need a corner. We know that they could use some help in the secondary, but it's that those front seven guys, the front four, and then the linebackers. Those are the guys that I see kind of taking backstage, but are very important potential prospects that the Steelers are going to pay attention to here. Did you kind of get the same impression?
Oh, definitely. I wanted to point out, I think the Bengals have a spy behind you.
They do, yes.
Kind of come in there doing a little spying, seeing what we're talking about.
Yep.
That's smart. You got to watch them. No,
it is. They painted over their stripes and
exactly,
wore the white jerseys. So
exactly, but I don't trust them Bengals. No,
me neither.
The cornerback is another position that's really deep, and it's great that where there's so many deep positions this year, the Steelers have so many needs. So that really behooves the Steelers to think early on a center because there's fewer of those. But now when you start bringing in guys, like originally we weren't talking about Barton because I had Barton as my number one rated guard. But now he can definitely play center. Same thing with Troy Fautanu. You've got Mike. He came in for a visit last week. Mason McCormick. Somebody that I had not even really been paying much attention to, and I had to start really diving in there from South Dakota State, and he is a very impressive athlete in his own right. But again, those are projects. Which, as far as McCormick, he's a project. So that would scare me a little bit because we need a plug and play guy. And as I've said, I want a guy with experience, and especially at the center position because experience matters for a center. It's a different animal. It's very different than guard or tackle. And so I'm hoping that the Steelers can get one of these guys that are very experienced and could, step right in and start. But, I'm very intrigued because we're hearing all these new rumors. That's what happens when you get to this week. But, everybody says, well, I heard this and I heard that. Yeah. And and a lot of it makes sense. Yeah. But we just don't know because we know Khan's going to do something.
We do. And, one of my biggest thoughts in this whole process has been, if the Steelers don't get their center in round one, I don't think there's a realm in which they are not moving up in round two to make sure that they get their guy because they cannot leave this draft without a starting center the way things are sitting currently. And I mean, they painted themselves into that corner, but they might be okay with that if they land a guy that they really like, which I think they could. And that'll get us into some of our questions here and keep them coming in. We'll get to as many as we can tonight. Let's start out with this first one from Eric Weidman. Who are we getting in the first round? Shannon, if you had to pick one guy that the Steelers would bring or would take at pick 20 or anywhere in the first round, wherever they pick, who is that guy for you?
Well, as I said, Fuaga is the target. To me, I think he's the cream of the crop, the perfect fit. Everybody knows I love Zach Frazier, the center out of West Virginia, but I'd prefer to get him late first, early second. If something happens there and they get a trade offer. But again, you've got cornerbacks that are great value if they fall to 20. Quinyon Mitchell, Arnold kid out of Alabama. These are guys that could potentially be top 10, top 15 picks. So great value there. So, but Fuaga would be a dream scenario, even if they had to trade up to like 14, because the Bengals will not let him past 18.
Yeah.
Every Bengals person I've talked to said they love him too. So if the Steelers get him, they're going to have to jump the Bengals.
It's important to recognize just how many teams need tackle in this draft and how many teams ahead of the Steelers need tackle. I could reel off 7 or 8 teams in front of the Steelers that could use a tackle, starting with the Titan. Well, you could even go with the Chargers at 5 and I know they're probably not going to take a tackle at 5. That if they don't trade out, then Arizona's going to, and you'd have to think that Marvin Harrison Jr. might be too good to pass up at 5 for them. But still, they're going to be looking at the tackle market. I think of the Chargers, the Titans, the Bears at 9 could go tackle. The Jets could go tackle at 10. You've got the Saints and the Raiders and the Bengals, like you're mentioning. A lot of these teams can go tackle if that's what they feel is top of their board and the players available. So there's no guarantee any of those guys make it to 20. And if that's the case, I do think the Steelers would be sitting pretty with an option at wide receiver, center, corner, something along those lines. The point being here, at 20, they're going to have a good option to pick.
Yes.
So the question then becomes, are there enough of them to where they would feel comfortable trading back 4, 5, or 6 spots and still landing a guy that they really like? Or are they going to want to say, well, there's only 2 guys that we really, really would love to take here in the first round, so we're just going to go ahead and take one of them here at 20 and worry about moving around on day 2. The 2 third-round picks, that's the sweet spot of this draft for the Steelers to figure out how they're going to be moving around. So great question. Thank you for that, Eric. Let's move on to Danny. Danny Owens Jr. says, do you think Zach Frazier will make it to the second round at 51? Let me put it to you short and sweet. No way. I just don't think so. At this point, Shannon, you might disagree. I don't know. Based on what we're hearing, I think Jackson Powers Johnson has a better chance at being there at 51 than Zach Frazier does. I think that they've flipped in the general consensus when you talk about the injury concerns with Powers Johnson and the lack of I guess, versatility along the line. I don't think many teams see him as anything other than a center, while some teams do see Frazier as potentially being able to play guard if he has to. I know they would love him to play center, but I think most teams and scouts would think of Frazier as the higher end prospect here. So I'm going to say no. I don't think Frazier's there at 51. What say you?
Oh, I agree. I think that people were enamored with Jackson Powers Johnson, but when I wrote my initial few articles about the center position, his build, he's top heavy. And nobody with his physique has had longevity in the NFL at center. Now, if you see Frazier, as Brian Baldinger says all the time, you see Mike Webster. They are very similar in build, stature. They're natural athletes. They're proportionally, their weight's distributed, their strength, their muscle mass. Frazier, 4-year starter. Almost all of it at center. He played a little guard as a freshman, but he's center all the way. And I believe that he is the choice now, and that people are concerned about the concussions and other injuries with Jackson Powers Johnson. So, yeah, I agree. I'm afraid that Frazier at the latest will go between 30 and 40. And so the Steelers, if they don't take him in the first, they're really going to have to maybe move one of them third-round picks and try to move up in the second.
I agree with that. And say the Steelers do trade back to 28 with the Bills, a team that could use wide receiver help. And maybe if Brian Thomas Jr. is still on the board or Adonai Mitchell, they just want to go make sure they get their guy, then they could be willing to move up. There's been a lot of talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So let's actually bring that up right now from Eric Parker. How valid is the trade down possibility with Tampa? What I'm trying to say with this is that in a trade down scenario, I think that immediately cues in my mind that Frazier's the target, in my opinion. If they trade down multiple spots back to like 27, 28, around that 30 range, I don't think they're going to get a Graham Barton there. I don't think they're going to get a tackle there that they would really like. So to me, that really shifts the conversation to Frazier or maybe a wide receiver, maybe, depending on what they get in value from the trade back and what they can do on day 2 with that. But yeah, I think Tampa, I think Buffalo, I think even San Francisco and Kansas City could be trade up targets, if you will, that you could consider there. But yeah, Tampa's a good one there. Arizona even could be one at 27. Their team, excuse me, They're a team
Bullshit.
that has 2 first-round picks. They might have a guy they really like. They've got a bunch of picks on day 2 and day 3 that they could be willing to trade. So it could be something where the Steelers just get an offer they can't resist, and they're like, well, that's fine. Our grade between Graham Barton and Zach Frazier isn't that different, so we'll just take Frazier at 27 and take the Cardinals' extra second-round pick that they don't want.
Well, we had talked earlier, and you was talking about the teams that really could use a tackle. Well,
Yeah.
those same teams, a lot of them that really could use a tackle, really need a quarterback, or they need a wide receiver,
Yeah.
or even a DB, but mainly quarterback and wide receiver. So that's good that a lot of people like these quarterbacks in this draft class. That there's a ton of wide receivers, but you got those top 5 or 6. So you take the teams you just mentioned. A lot of them would like to move up and get one of them top 5 or 6 wide receivers, which that would bode well for the Steelers because you could trade back, get additional picks, and still get your guy in a Zach Frazier. So yeah, I think that would be an ideal scenario. If it happens.
I agree as well. That'd be, there's a lot of ways the Steelers can win this draft, just to be upfront, and it doesn't have to be as cookie cutter as maybe our vision for it would be. That's why Omar Khan and Andy Weidel. That's why I say let them cook, let them do what they need to do, and make this happen. So,
did you hear the rumor this week that Adonai Mitchell out of Texas, who was the guy that I thought the Steelers could even consider at 20,
yeah,
because he's young and fast, got size, but they say he is uncoachable. They say he is very difficult to deal with. He's very immature. A lot of the same things that was said about George Pickens.
Yeah.
And so, a lot of that can be true. Some of it's been accurate. But see, that's not good for the Steelers. I want all these guys to test well, and I want them on their personality checks to be fine because that's going to bring demand and help the Steelers trade back if necessary. So I wasn't happy to hear that.
Sure. Well, hey, the hope then is that Brian Thomas Jr. Makes a tumble down the draft board and he's sitting there at 20.
Yes, exactly.
And there's some people in the chat that I was noticing that they're saying if he's there at 20, he should be the pick. I don't know if I agree with that based on what you can get further down and what the Steelers already have. Brian Thomas Jr.
He's very much like George Pickens.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if I want 2 guys that similar.
Yeah.
You really want a more of a route runner, a guy who could get open, precision. If you're going to have a guy like Pickens, who is your deep threat. So, I mean, I don't necessarily know I want 2 George Pickens.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I think you could use maybe a bigger bodied route runner, like a Xavier Legette. That's a guy that I really like in this class. Something like that. Going back to what you were saying earlier, Shannon, Dave Schofield, who's in the chat with us tonight. Hey Dave, how's it going? Says Fuaga is his favorite too. Yeah. I got to say, if he's there at 20, snap him up. Snap him up.
I'll do a little dance.
Yeah, absolutely. Go up to 17 and snatch him in front of the Bengals. That would be even funnier. I'd like that.
That'd be even better. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll see how that plays out. Hey, let's do this. Let's take a quick break on the audio side. If you're here watching us live, we're not going anywhere, but let's take a quick break. We'll be right back and we'll continue talking draft and answering your questions about selection weekend here on the Steelers Sunday Night Q&A. All right, and welcome back to the Steelers Sunday Night Q&A. It's Jeremy Betts and Shannon White here with you to talk all things NFL draft for the Pittsburgh Steelers specifically. And Shannon, I don't know if you've had a chance to listen to Andrew and I break down the draft on the FFSN NFL draft preview, but we're doing all 32 teams over there and trying to stay as objective as possible. But it is hard when you're a Steelers fan and you get to pick 20 and you see all these players around there. I will say though, you can trust me. I'm not rigging my draft so the Steelers get my guy. I promise you. Promise you that I'm not doing that. So check out that show if you haven't. Check out all of Shannon's work and everything that we've got going here at the Steel Curtain Network and the Fans First Sports Network. Let's get into some more questions here, Shannon. Daniel Red asked a question. about Brandon Ayuk, which is still in play here. I think, the trade scenario for a wide receiver, that's still in play. We'll see how that plays out as draft time approaches. But I think at this point, we're waiting for draft weekend to see if anything materializes there. Daniel Red says, do you guys think Khan and Coach T can get Ayuk for $17.5 million a year? That's less than they were paying Deontay Johnson. So I'm going to say no, but Shannon, your thoughts?
No, the projection was, I say 4 years, $100 million, which would be in line with what Devontae Smith got for the Eagles. And so their numbers, if you look at Devontae Smith and you look at Ayuk, their career statistics and everything is very similar. And I think what's happening is this is such a deep class that it's causing teams to want to use the franchise tag on these receivers who are top end wide receiver 2 or low grade wide receiver 1, because they realize there's some guys they could replace them with in this draft class. So they're that's why they're putting that franchise tag, and these guys ain't happy about it. Cortland Sutton is another good name out there. There's different guys that could be available because you could get a replacement, cheap and have, at least 4 years, but 5 years in a cheaper cost in this very draft. So if anything happens, it'll happen on draft night, I believe. And I don't know if the Steelers are willing to, because they would basically have to sign him quickly. I guarantee him that 4-year $100 million, and you're probably looking at what, high 60, 70 guaranteed. So I just think the Steelers would be better off to just draft a guy and have that cheaper control.
Yeah, I agree. And that's why I think that they need to draft one earlier than the 3rd round, because they have the guys, to fill out the back end of the roster, the number 3, 4, 5, 6 receivers. They're missing that too. They really are. Or the 1B to George Pickens. And I just think that the way that they're planning to operate here has to be has to be with a wide receiver very early in this draft. And so
definitely.
Makes sense to me that they would do that and probably forego the Ayuk thing at this point, unless the price just comes way down and then it makes it worth it for them to send pick 98 over to San Francisco. I don't think they would ever do that, but that's to me the kind of price that would say, okay, the Steelers would do that instead of drafting a guy, because at this point, if you're going to have to spend a 2nd round pick and pay the guy, just go ahead and spend the 2nd round pick on the receiver that you think could best come in and start right away as your number 2. And that would be your better bet.
One quick observation. Somebody wrote last week, if you ever look at Arthur Smith's offenses, the number 2 wide receiver averages like 40 catches and 500 yards and 2 touchdowns. The number 2 wide receiver is not used. He doesn't generate targets like the number 1 because he throws to the tight ends a lot and the running backs. So you don't want to overpay for a wide receiver 2 in this offense because they're not going to have the production there.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. So let's move on to to a player that's on the Steelers right now. A question from Daniel Red. How do y'all feel about Loudermilk? I'm going to say I think he's easily replaceable, and that the Steelers would not think of him as a guy to preclude them from taking a defensive tackle on day 2 or 3. But what do you think about Isaiah Loudermilk this year?
I got a lot of grief when they picked him, and in my grading the pick article, I was like, I think I give it a C-, and everybody's like, oh, yeah. And I said, well, I know they know the guys from Wisconsin. That's kind of a pipeline for Pittsburgh, but I just didn't see anything special that made me think he was going to be special at the NFL level, and he hasn't been. And now he's, him and Leal are both going to be fighting for their careers, at least in Pittsburgh this training camp. So, I'm like you. I think Loudermilk, I think you could replace his production with a guy in the 5th round this year.
I agree. Even if it's just a big body who knows how to stop the run, that's
Gabe Hall
kind of
from Baylor. Somebody like that. easily could replace his production.
Yep. The McKinley kid from Texas A&M, I believe,
Yeah,
would be an option there too.
yep.
Yeah, to
There's
kind of
some
just be
big bodies, and they
Yeah.
have value. And a lot
Yeah,
of
they
times
do.
they get pretty good contracts in the NFL because they are, they tie up space
Yeah. And a lot of times they're a 4th-round pick because
or
the
later.
positional value isn't as high as the
Exactly.
pass
Yeah.
rushing defensive tackle. So hey, go get a guy like that. At pick 119, if they walked away with a run plugging defensive tackle, I'd be thrilled with that. I'd be absolutely thrilled with that. All right, here's a good question from Afton Fored. A lot of talk about Graham Barton as a center. She asks, is Graham Barton starter capable right now? I have my thoughts on this, Shannon, but your take.
I don't think he is a starter just based on that experience. 6 starts as a freshman. That's been a while. And center, as I said, is a different animal. Not only do you have to have communication skills, leadership skills, you're the quarterback of the offensive line. You're calling out adjustments and blitz pickups, and you get everybody in the right position. But you have to be able to develop a rapport with your quarterback. That is something that's so underrated that people don't realize. And the best centers in NFL history have all been incredibly durable. Now, there's a toughness factor in there. Mike Webster, because he was short and he had short arms, he used the top of his helmet on every play. Every block he was hitting with the top of his helmet. That's why he got CTE. But that dude, you'd see him on the sidelines, and it looked like he was dying. He'd take his helmet off, and he would, he looked like he was going to die. I remember as a kid, I'd be like, I was worried about him. But he always put the helmet back on and went back out there. There's just a center. It takes a different breed of animal to play that position. You not only you got to be incredibly intelligent, but you got to be intense, and you got to be the ultimate team player because you get no credit. And I believe Barton has great potential, but you can't just throw him out there. So you would have to start Herbig or Spencer Anderson, or pick up somebody, even though there's not much out there, at least for a while before Barton would be ready.
See, I absolutely get your take on that. And obviously with him not having played the position for 3.5 years now, it makes sense why you would want to give him some time to develop. I think that, one of the big takes about Barton in this whole process is absolutely one of the most intelligent players in this entire draft. I mean, he went to Duke. You don't go to Duke if you don't have brain power. So
it's like Stanford.
I think he's very intelligent. Yeah, I think he's very intelligent. I think athletically, he's kind of one of those guys who can get out there and do whatever he wants to because he's athletically gifted enough to be able to handle it. Now, where I could see there being issues early is in the rapport with the quarterback, the calling protections and things like that. But he did a little bit of that as a left tackle at Duke. I mean, he's pointing out the blitzers. He's calling out the mic. He was doing a lot of stuff at left tackle for Duke. And I just kind of get the feeling if you can play a little bit of center and then move out to left tackle and be good there, you can probably do whatever you want to. So I would be more inclined to say he could start right away. There might be a few bumps in the road, but I think he could at least provide you plus Mason Cole level play right away and then eventually become a really, really good center.
But the Mason Cole, that's not saying a lot. I mean, the Steelers haven't really had nothing there for a while since Pouncey retired. But I'll say this, and I think a lot of times people don't think about this. The guys I've known that played at a high level, that played the offensive line, at tackle, there's many times you're swinging out wide. You're not in congestion. It's more of a being on an island, one-on-one.
True.
It's a different mindset. You don't have to focus on snapping the ball. And the Steelers have had huge problems snapping the ball for years now. And there's just so much more to playing center than a tackle. If you're athletic as Barton is, it's just like mirror this guy, keep him off the quarterback. And he's great at that. But playing center is different. There's all that congestion. The taller you are, the longer your legs are, the more chances of somebody coming into your legs, falling on the back of your legs. There's just a lot to think about center, and it's more of a mentally taxing position. It's like wearing the green dot as the middle linebacker. Like, both guys don't wear the green dot. One guy's just sick 'em, but one guy's got to be mentally invested every play pre-snap. And that's kind of like what being a center is. It's more responsibility than any of the other positions. So that's why I think that they, regardless of athleticism, because Barton is a great athlete, but there is that mental gymnastics, and that has nothing to do with intelligence. It takes time to feel comfortable, let's say, playing the position.
Yeah, that's very true. And you know, I think if the Steelers do take Graham Barton and give him all the reps at center in training camp, it might be enough to get him to a good spot. But I do agree. I think there would be bumps in the road if you were to start him day one at center. Whereas if you draft Zach Frazier and start him day one, you don't have to worry about him not knowing how to handle the position. It's just getting the other offensive linemen to gel, that part of the game for any rookie, wherever you come in, learning how to play alongside your teammates on a new team and a new system. That would be the concern there. Barton, his upside is a little bit more than Frazier's at the position down the road, but I think either way, you're getting a really good player at the center position. I think those are the two guys that the Steelers are really targeting at the center position.
I think so too, yeah.
All right, let's move on to Danny Owens Jr. What position can we double pick in the draft? So a double dip in the draft. Shannon, I would go to the wide receiver talk and say, you know, maybe you go get somebody in the second round, and then with that last 6th round pick, maybe you go get a shifty slot weapon or a speedster on the outside, somebody with a little bit more of a unique skill set to bring to the table, in case one of your 3 or 4 signings doesn't work out, or Calvin Austin doesn't take another step forward, and you just want to replace kind of that production. Wide receiver would be one there. I don't know. I thought maybe corner early on, but I don't know about that now. What do you think?
Well, I immediately thought wide receiver, just because of the depth at the position in this class. You have to think who would be there at 6 in the 6th round, because that's probably going to be that second guy. Yeah. A defensive lineman. Let's say a Brandon Fisk is there in the 3rd, and they don't trade one of the 3rd picks, and they got Brandon Fisk. Great value. Then Gabe Hall in the 6th, let's say. I've had that happen in many mock drafts.
Yeah.
That would be an ideal scenario. And, you know, then you have like cornerback, some depth there. A lot of these slot guys, you know, people are overlooking Shannon Beanie Bishop from WVU. I watched him all year. He's very feisty. I love his competitiveness. He is Mike Hilton-ish in how competitive he is, but he's much faster. He's much better at coverage. Now, he played on the outside for West Virginia, but there's a guy that could easily fall in the 5th or 6th round, which I think would be crazy, but nobody's talking about him. So if he was there, they could easily double dip at corner.
So, Shannon, would it be absolutely Christmas morning for you if the Steelers take 2 West Virginia prospects in this draft class?
Well, I only want them to take West Virginia guys that I'm high on, or that I feel that can actually help the Steelers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Obviously Zach Frazier.
Yeah.
And I think Bishop would be a really tough later round slot guy. The Mountaineers have Doug Nestor. And I'll tell everybody, if you know, when you're thinking undrafted guy that you could bring in, he's a tackle guard guy. He could play either. Really good length, and he was a 3-year starter, and he's a guy who gives you everything he's got. That's a guy you'd love to have on the bench that could come in and, you know, because those undrafted guys matter too.
They do. And I mean, hey, Jaylen Warren's one of those guys. And
exactly.
You're looking at him as maybe the 3rd most important weapon on the offense, 3rd or 4th most important weapon on the offense this season. So I like it. One of the reasons, Shannon, I think the Steelers are focusing in, narrowing it on center early in round 1, maybe in round 2 if they don't get it in round 1. and I think that they would go wide receiver in round 1 if they don't go center,
Mhm.
is because of a guy like Blake Fisher. There's several of these type of offensive tackles that you can get on day 2. Blake Fisher is one of my favorites, that the Steelers brought in. A guy that could sit this year, learn, compete, and then next year Dan Moore Jr. is gone. There's no way they resign him unless he has an all-pro season this year for some strange reason out of the blue. Dan Moore Jr. is gone after this year. Broderick Jones probably moving over. Blake Fisher, one of these guys, that's when they could come in and start to compete for starting snaps across from Broderick Jones, whichever side they end up playing. But guys like Fisher, there's the kid from Yale, I think, Kieran Amagaji, I think is his name.
I can't say his last name.
Yeah, he's intriguing to me too. A long prospect there. There's Patrick Paul on day 2 that I really like. There's a lot of these guys, a little more developmental. But if you're looking for starters in the first and second round, do that at center and wide receiver, and then come back for one of these tackles on day 2 where you can get good value. And you also get a guy with some upside because Blake Fisher's got a lot of upside. What do you think?
Yeah, the first round tackles are almost plug and play. All these second day 2 guys are projects. They've got strengths and weaknesses, like really good strengths, but a little bit of a glaring weakness that's going to have to be worked on and coached. As you said, another kid is Morgan from Arizona. Really good length and strong and good run blocker, pass protection, not as good. That's what I'm saying. All the second day tackles, you're going to have to accept, you're going to have to develop them, and that Dan Moore Jr. is going to be a starter again. That scares me. It scares me for 2 reasons. We know that Russell Wilson and Justin Fields held the ball longer than any other quarterbacks last year. They were also 2 of the most sacked quarterbacks last year, and they're both mobile. Now, you put them behind the line with Dan Moore Jr. as the starting left tackle, there is going to be problems because both guys were fumblers.
Yeah.
And one thing about Kenny Pickett, in these tiny hands, he didn't fumble. So I think that we're losing sight. I think that you have to solidify the line this year if you do nothing else, because that'll give Wilson or Fields the opportunity to maximize their talent and help the Steelers figure out what they have at the quarterback position.
Absolutely. And they need to find that out ASAP.
Yes.
If they're going to be successful this year or any other year. All right. Hey, let's start doing some rapid fire here, Shannon, on some of these and try to get through as many as we can. Here's a fun one from Thanks Mean Joe. Trade up with the Bears? ? They're big pushovers, LOL. If the Bears, if Ryan Poles ever picks up the 412 area code again, he ought to be fired on the spot. That's just, the Bears fans should fire him on the spot. That's just my take on that. But any chance Rome Odunze is there at 9 that the Bears would trade out of that pick and give him to Pittsburgh?
No, I mean, one of my dear friends who love the Bears, he's wanting Caleb Williams, and he's praying that Harrison can fall to number 9.
Oh, no.
Because that's his dream. But I think if Odunze's there or Neighbors, that 9th pick will be a wide receiver.
Yep, I agree 100%. I don't think they're taking that call from Pittsburgh to take Odunze away from him here.
No.
Jack asked, do we stick to best player available? And if a quality cornerback is available in round 1, does Con grab him? We could use another top cornerback. If Quinyon Mitchell or Terry Arnold are anywhere in the vicinity, they could be the pick. I mean, what do you think?
I mean, best player available, I always say at a position of need. Well, the Steelers have multiple needs. A cornerback's one of them. And if you could team either of the guys, Mitchell or Arnold, with Joey Porter Jr., hey, baby, lights out defense. And then you worry about, I trust Con and him to maneuver around in them rest of the rounds. So, it's definitely a possibility.
Yeah, I think they can get they can get the people that they need this year. So that would be awesome to me as well. Absolutely. Okay. As, before I bring up this question, I'm going to say, if I know Shannon, I know the answer to this, because Shannon does not like problem players.
No.
Off the field issues, you're off Shannon's board, baby. So what do you say about, do we like Jermaine Burton, Alabama wide receiver? I would even say absolutely not to this, but I don't know. What do you think?
And especially at the wide receiver position.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but wide receivers tend to lose their mind playing in Pittsburgh. Now, to be fair, if I played under Kevin, if I played for Matt Canada, in that offense, I'd have lost my mind too, regardless of position. But no, I would say no, thank you.
Yes, I agree. A lot of talent, but he's you can't try with that, in my opinion. He's a guy who could go undrafted based on his off the field stuff, but I think somebody will probably pick him up.
It's scary stuff. Yeah,
it is. Dave Schofield, are y'all all hoping the Steelers trade back for one of those guys? And one of those guys probably would be the centers that we were talking about.
Yeah.
Would you prefer there to be someone unexpected available at 20 they then get? I think if the Fuaga one is the one that I would say, if he's there at 20, that would be unexpected to me, but that would be awesome.
I don't think he'd get Mitchell, by the Bengals.
Yeah, I agree. Quinion Mitchell and Terrion Arnold would kind of fall in that category for me.
Yep.
Anybody else for you, Shannon?
I liked I just call him AD Mitchell.
Yeah.
But now I'm leery about that. Whereas there's so many guys, like McConkley and who's the kid out of Florida? Pearsall?
Pearsall.
Yeah, I mean, these are excellent guys. It would be first round grades in a normal year. So I would not want to reach for a wide receiver when you can get quality guys on day two. So yeah, I'm like you, Mitchell, Arnold. I would even trade up. The only guy I'd trade up for is Fuaga.
Yeah. Fuaga or Odunze. If Odunze gets to like 11, I'm doing whatever it takes.
Well, the only problem is they need draft capital.
Yeah.
And if you could trade next year's draft capital to move up, I would be for it. And everybody said, why do you say that? Because I believe if they hit this draft, they've accelerated their rebuild immensely. Yeah. And next year they shouldn't be picking at 20. They should be picking later. And I'm more willing to give up next year's capital than I am this year because they need it.
A good point. A good point there for sure. Okay. Couple more here. Do you guys think they will regret trading Deontay Johnson? If they don't get the wide receiver that can be a 2 for them this year, then yes, I do think that they would regret that. What do you think?
No, never.
No? Okay. Yeah. And that would go to his behavior probably, and the fact that they did get a starting corner in the trade. So,
well, my only thing is the Steelers have spoiled me. I've watched some of the best wide receivers come through Pittsburgh. You just, you take too long to name them all. But there's Hall of Fame guys. There's guys that were great that people don't talk about, like Lewis Lips and Santonio Holmes, and just guy after guy. Antonio Brown was want to be one of the top 2 or 3 ever if he hadn't went crazy.
Yeah.
So Deontay Johnson was not tough enough, physical enough. He was not an ultimate team player. He was a stats guy, and he wanted his catches, and then he wanted self-preservation. I don't want those guys. So I struggled with him. I admit it. I love all Steelers, but it was hard to root for Devin Bush. It was hard to root for Mike Mitchell when he was there. It was hard to root for Deontay Johnson because they're not my type players. And I think that he was a terrible fit for this offense, and I think they got something out of him, and I'm happy.
I can't argue with you there. While I think he's a good player, I just think his time was up in Pittsburgh. Contractually, you don't want to pay him that much money anymore when you can get something cheaper or a better player for a little bit more. So yeah, I 100% agree with everything you're saying there. 2 more questions here. Eric Weidman asked, do we take Powers Johnson if he's available at 20? I don't think they would take him at 20. I think that they might take him late in the draft if they were to trade way back and somebody else is gone. They might take him on day 2 if they go somewhere else in round 1 and they can't get Frazier. But do you think Jackson Powers Johnson is in any way a consideration at 20 at this point for the Steelers?
No, I have a second round grade on him, and I think the Steelers do too. I do not expect him to go in the first round.
All right, and then finally, a very good question, and one I would not hate if this happens. Mark Lancaster asked, can we get Trotter Jr. with our second, third-round pick? That's a home run selection to me. If he's there at 98 and you take Jeremiah Trotter Jr., I mean, we forget that this guy had first-round grades very early in the process, and then you turn on the tape and you see some inconsistencies, some instinctual things you'd like to see improve, but athletically, you can't ask for more from this guy. He can kind of do whatever he wants to with his athletic traits. He's not the biggest guy, but I love Jeremiah Trotter Jr., especially in the third round. What do you say?
Oh, that'd be a great value. And, I love linebackers,
Yep.
and I like physical guys that like to hit, and he qualifies. So if you can get him with that second, third rounder, that would be excellent value.
Plus, he wouldn't have to be the guy. You've got 2 guys ahead of him at least. And maybe
and I
a third
believe
if Holcomb comes back.
I believe he's got the experience, the family. When you got that kind of genetics and you've grown up listening to your dad talk about all the intricacies of playing the position at the NFL level, I think he can wear the green dot and it not efface him. We don't want Patrick Queen to wear the green dot. Patrick Queen is a see him, hit him. He is not a thinker green dot guy. So, like you said, Trotter would be excellent at that.
Give the green dot to Roberts this year. Let's do that.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Let's call it good and let Patrick Queen just go nuts on the football field. And
hopefully Holcomb can get on the field at some point.
Yeah, exactly. That to me it would be a home run pick. And then you've got a guy for the future to pair with Queen. You've got a guy that can role play this year. And I mean, Trotter would be epic on special teams early in his career, even if that's the only role he would play. And then my last thing on Jeremiah Trotter Jr., let's compare him to Devin Bush real quick. And from an expectations standpoint, when you're talking about a guy with NFL pedigree and NFL family bloodlines, Devin Bush going at 10th overall in the first round, that is massive expectations. The bar for expectation is up here.
Yeah.
And then even if the play is middle class linebacker at the NFL level, and he didn't quite get there either, but even if it's that, you're already way below the expectation. If you're picking Jeremiah Trotter in the third round, expectations are down here. If he's even just a good linebacker, I mean, that improves his stock in the eyes of the team and in the eyes of fans that much more. So if the Steelers could get him in the third round, the value there to me is impeccable. So, all right, Shannon, any final thoughts before we go? I know there's a lot to talk about. We're going to have plenty of content for you coming up for the draft itself. I'm sure all of us will get on our Zoom call or whatever during the draft and yap it up and talk about the picks and everything. But we'll do our roundtables. We'll have a lot of stuff coming. You'll see both Shannon and myself on the platform a lot. Check out the FFSN NFL Draft Preview. We're going to be recapping every day of the draft. That'll run the next morning. So recap round 1 on Friday morning, recap rounds 2 and 3 on Saturday morning, and vice versa. So that's all going to happen. Shannon, anything coming up for you? Any final thoughts?
Just tomorrow, I know for sure we'll be doing the Steelers hangover at 5:20. We've had to move the time back from 5 to 5:20. So if anybody shows up at 5 and they don't see us, that's why. And then there's going to be other things this week. Already been talking to different people about doing different stuff. So, just keep an eye out for us. And like I said, we're going to be covering it from start to finish, both in our articles and in the podcast. And so very excited about it and look forward to experiencing all with our community. You're muted.
Yeah, I left myself muted, didn't I? Yeah. I realized it right away. The little pop-up came up and I said, crap. All right. But hey, thanks for tuning in. I need to stop talking anyway. We've had a good long show for you guys. We appreciate you all tuning in. We'll talk to you next time here on the Steelers Q&A for Shannon White and Jeremy Betts. Talk to you next time.